Yo, hello and welcome to another video observing how pyro has changed since 2015. Today we will be looking at airblast, which has changed a lot since then. According to the patch notes, the airblast hit detection now uses a cone-shaped hitbox instead of the janky cube, but this appears to be false. I might be missing something, but still feels like a cube to me after testing. Although I think the position of the cube may have changed because you can hit people behind you now at certain angles. I don't think that was possible before. So the method of hit detection appears to be mostly the same. However, the way it pushes enemies around has changed significantly. Before I talk about that, however, I want to note that when reflecting projectiles, the crosshair now ignores players and entities. For example, in the past, if a teammate were to walk between you and a rocket as you reflect it, the rocket would move from its current position towards that teammate and back towards you. Now the crosshair will ignore players and instead aim at the part of the map behind them. This can make it difficult to hit your target in some cases, but it's better than having a rocket swerve backwards and kill you, in my opinion. Now onto the meat of the video, airblast knockback. Before the patch, airblast would reset the enemy's current velocity regardless of how fast or which direction they were moving, and then redirect it upwards and away from your position in a very consistent and predictable trajectory. You can actually observe how it used to work on a listen server with the command tf airblast cray. Set it to 0, and you will see the angle and speed they would fly away was decided by the relative position of the pyro and the enemy. Didn't matter where you aim, only where you exist relative to each other when the airblast hits. With the new airblast, the angle you aim has influence, but only on the vertical axis. So if you aim straight up, they'll be pushed straight up. If you aim straight forwards, they'll be pushed away. But the horizontal axis still is decided by your two positions. So you could even be looking in the opposite direction and they'd be pushed away in the same way as if you were aiming directly at them. It doesn't make a difference. Unlike the old airblast, the new one factors in the target's velocity when it pushes them away. The way it does this is kind of complicated. I don't understand exactly how it's calculated. There's a lot of maths and physics stuff going on. But I realized that you don't actually need to understand that stuff to be able to use it effectively. You know, it's kind of like how you don't need to calculate the exact trajectory to be able to airshot someone, or even to catch a ball in real life. You can just kind of react and adapt to it naturally. However, I do believe it helps to have a general frame of reference for where your target might fly, depending on how you airblast them, so you can make better decisions about how to do so and how to follow up. Because the trajectories you get can, in fact, be somewhat unpredictable depending on how they move. I'll give a few examples. So this bot is set to mimic my actions, and I'll just show you what happens if you airblast upwards when he stands still. It goes about that high, but if he jumps, he goes much higher, probably more than twice as high. Or if an enemy is walking towards you, you can airblast them about that far. But if they're walking away from you, they go about that far. So what if they're walking away and they jump? You'll see. That's just ridiculous, okay? So just walking and strafing yields massively different results from one airblast. For this example, I should first mention that aiming downwards when airblasting a grounded enemy causes them to go upwards, as if you were aiming upwards. Rather than pushing them into the ground, the vector gets mirrored off the ground and bounces them away. This also means that airblasting downwards on a sloped surface like this will mirror the vector away, that way. So in a situation like this, where the only way to airblast the enemy is to aim downwards, normally they would be bouncing up, just like that. But what if they were to jump at the exact moment that you airblast? They just stick to the ground. Or if you were to delay it a little bit, they'd even take some fall damage. Which is neat, but there's just such a huge discrepancy for the result based on such tiny, unpredictable differences. This is vastly different from the previous version where movement made little to no difference. I don't want to talk too much about how to use the new airblast right now. First, because I still don't understand everything, and second, because it would probably take me another 20 minutes anyway, so I'll have to make another separate video about that. Like I said earlier, you can use airblast to cause crater damage now, so you can use that to get some free damage every now and then. Another thing, if there's enough velocity, airblast can initiate a ramp slide now. I mean, they can fight against it, but it was never possible before, so it's still interesting. Airblast also has a completely new property that makes you lose your footing, so any enemy that gets airblasted has less control over their strafing on the ground for about half a second. Something interesting about this though is that during that half a second you can actually accelerate past the default strafe speed, which could be advantageous for the person being airblasted, or it could be disorienting and make them fall off the map. This is a neat little trick. You can airblast downwards to bounce off an enemy's head, maintain your speed, to either get to higher up spots or to extend a detonator jump. It's extremely hard to pull off in a real game with real players and latency, but you know, it's a cool little trick if you can manage to pull it off. To sum up my thoughts on the current state of the airblast, I think the new version is a step in the right direction, but it feels too volatile, and what I'm talking about is how very slight changes in enemies' movement yields very different results when you airblast them. Probably the biggest problem in my opinion is that it's just so easy to completely fuck up your airblast if they just jump. It's very common as a pyro to pop your enemy up in the air to restrict their movement by airblasting upwards or downwards, and there are times where it's preferable to aim one way over the other, but I find the airblast is more likely to connect if you aim downwards. The reason for this is because the airblast hitbox spawns outwards from your point of view, which is higher up on your body. Allow me to demonstrate by looking straight downwards against this spot that is above me clearly. So that hits him like normal, but if we trade places, it's not going to hit him unless I lower the angle significantly, and at that point it wouldn't even pop him up in most cases, it would only push him away. If you so much as jump when you try to airblast looking upwards, it's never going to hit him. You only need to be about this much higher off the ground. It's not going to hit him. But if you aim at the ground, you can easily pop them right up from well above. Okay, so we've established that there are times where it's more reliable to aim downwards when you're trying to airblast someone, but the problem with that is if they happen to jump at the time that you airblast, which is impossible to predict or react to, it has almost no effect and you're stuck on airblast cooldown still. I really dislike that they added this cool mechanic and yet they force you to take a gamble between either completely missing or completely nullifying the effect. I'm not really sure what the solution is here. I think lowering the spawn point of the cube lower into the center of the body might be a start, but I also feel like that might give rise to other problems as well. So probably the best solution is one that changes the properties of the downwards airblast, but again, that probably would come with its own problems. In fact, I'm quite certain that they only made it so that they bounce off the ground as a solution to the ground stall problem. That being said, I still prefer the current airblast over the old one. The old airblast was too brain dead and boring in my opinion. It would push them in the exact same path at the exact same speed every time. Doesn't matter how fast they're moving, which direction they're moving, same thing every time, making it extremely predictable. Nothing exciting ever happens. What I personally like about the new airblast is that there's just so much that is possible now that wasn't with the old airblast. Even something as simple as being able to choose the angle that they get pushed away, that just adds so much more depth to what you can do. That, combined with the way it interacts with player movement now, not only keeps more control in the hands of the one being airblasted, but requires more thinking on the part of the one doing the airblasting. Again, I don't really know anything about balancing video games. I'm just spitballing here, just throwing out ideas, try to generate some discussion. So let me know what you think, post in the comments, post on Reddit, buy some rope, and I want to leave you with one more thing before we end the video. The updates also saw the rebirth of a classic bug that is very dear to my heart. It was originally patched around 2010, but it's back now, for some reason. What it does is it spams a fake airblast as you shoot the flamethrower. It doesn't have any airblast properties besides the visual and audio effect, but it is extremely annoying, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So first thing you want to do tap and release mouse 2 really quickly. You want to make it a really short tap. And then immediately after you do that, hold mouse 1. You could even already be holding mouse 1 and then tap mouse 2 really quickly. And then you'll notice that the flamethrower is firing. It's firing flames, but it's not making the flamethrower sound effect. So let's try it again. You can tap mouse 2 and then immediately hold mouse 1. Now that doesn't look that strange from first person. It's just a normal flamethrower, but with no sound effect. But I'm going to show you what it looks like from a third person perspective.